Welcome everybody to our June 2024 review of where the money went last month with Link, our partners LinkSV and Bob and Don. Great to see you. I want to hear all the good news, I hope. I feel like we're moving at, I remember we used to be moving at internet speed. Now we're moving at AI speed. So month to month, even when we get to that third week, I feel like there's always hope, right? Um, but Don, great to see you. And Bob, Don, I'm going to kick it over to you.
Okay, super. Thank you, David. I'm going to share my screen here. Let's see. Screen. Come on. Share. Let's see if I can. Okay. So, all right. Full disclosure, everyone. It's going to be more of a talk and tell than a show and tell today. I spent since 3 o'clock yesterday at a nonprofit event that I chair for graduates of our local high school. I haven't gotten any sleep, so if I trip over my own tongue, you'll bear with me. But there's a lot of interesting things that I want to bring up for last month. So last month was the highest funding in a single month this year, and not by just a little bit, by a lot. You can see where we end up. We're very close to where we were in 2021. Now, 12 billion, just a little bit over 12 billion to 176 companies. Now you can contrast that to last month, which was 4.5 to 206 companies. Lots of mega deals. 9.9 million of that 12 billion, or 9.9 billion of that 12 billion went to mega deals. 14 different companies, again, more than we've had in a single month. Now, there were a couple of really big ones you've probably heard of. There was 6 billion that went to Elon Musk's XAI. That was a standout. But even if I were to take that out, we're still well above where we've been the rest of the year. Another billion of that went to Scale AI. As a matter of fact, another 600 million of that went to biotech, and down from there into software and a variety of other markets. What I want to take a look at, last month we were at 14 billion, and 53 billion was the total for last year. We're now at 26 billion, and we're just going into June. So the funding, from our perspective, we're seeing more fundings, but also we're seeing more later stage fundings, and that's a key differentiation between this month, this year, and last month, the same time last year. We actually have had more than 3 times the number of B rounds, B or later rounds, so BCD. So these are not the early stage startups, the seed and the Series A. These companies have established their product, they've found their market, they're ready to start scaling.
Hey, Don, before you leave that, can I make a comment?
Oh, please.
Okay. So you want to just thinking about companies getting priced rounds, B, C, A, B, C, and D rounds, more activity. It means when these companies get more funds, I see 2 trends. One is in Silicon Valley, you don't build, you buy. So they'll be looking for small acquisitions to make, not big time acquisitions, but they'll be scouring the market for ground floor acquisitions to make, which I think is interesting for a lot of reasons. And 2, it means that angel investors which is right now we're having a nuclear winter for angel investing. Angel investors might come crawling out from under their rocks and have a little more interest, because if they see these other companies are getting funded, it means the places they want to make an investment are areas that are getting funded, which will be a good lift up for them. So I think this is all good news for the industry. And of course, when you have M&A, then you have all the other ramifications of having an M&A. People in those companies, some stay, some leave. There's a lot of work for accountants and lawyers and other business people that are service providers to go after these companies, and these people be leaving and starting their own companies. There's a lot of activity happens beyond just priced rounds raising funding. There you go.
And actually, along that same line, Bob, looking at the M&As, we're seeing almost 3 times the M&As in May that we did a year ago.
And I told you about a year ago, I thought we're going to have a more active M&A market. So
right, and there's multiple drivers for that. Part of it is the public market's doing well, so these public companies have more money to spend.
Right.
The other part of it is 2021, 22. A lot of companies got funded. They got a lot of money. They got really high valuations, and they haven't gone out for funding again. Some of them because they can't get the same valuation, some of them because they still have money left over. But a good number of these companies are going to hit the wall this year. And one of the things you do when you hit the wall, if you can't get funding, then you try to get acquired. So
it would be pretty frustrating if you're already a C-round company and you've been accustomed to getting money every other year from the investors, and now you can't get any money, and you go, wait a second, the market's at an all-time high. These guys can buy us with less dilution to their cap. Why aren't they investing in us? So the answer is they better be damn good, because the investors, if they're are all looking at AI, so as the new shiny object, so you better have something awfully good in your offering to attract them to want to come back to you, even though their cost of dilution is going to be less. So just a thought.
Yep. And we expect that trend to continue this year. But the good public market has not yet been good enough to really open the IPO window. We've seen a few more IPOs. There's a couple of AI companies that are looking to go public in the very near future. But overall, there's still, I think NASDAQ says there are in excess of 100 companies that have filed confidentially. So they have said they want to go public. They just don't want everyone to know. And that's the backlog. So we're not seeing
Don, it's interesting in your comment, thinking a lot about this IPO thing, because everybody knows it costs so much money to do an IPO, to maintain an IPO, all the just so much backroom stuff that has to be done. But if you can't raise money from your investors, you're almost forced to go IPO. Okay, so there must be a lot of companies right now that have no other choice than to go IPO, but they don't have the chops to make it happen, or the expense of the time. So it's really kind of it's a very difficult situation, a catch-22 for a lot of these companies, the positions they're in.
Yeah, PitchBook is predicting that in excess of 2,400 companies of their startup companies will disappear. Some of them will publicly dissolve, some of them will just go away. But we're going to see that continuing this year because of the funding crunch and because money's running out on that side.
And again, on that note, Don, because we get all these things that we read all the time. They love to publicize when they have a victory. Oh my gosh, we did this. Here's this amount of money. Yada yada yada. When things go bad, you never hear. We have to scrape to find it.
And Bob, how about? Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, how about also raising money through like just tokenizing their company and pulling in through, some type of blockchain strategy?
Okay, so David, I have no expertise in that area whatsoever, but I would imagine the underlying factors are going to be the same. You still have to have all the chops and all the ability to raise capital. I have seen a couple situations where they've referenced tokenization and raising money. I don't quite get it, but I mean, all these, they're just on another side. I'm going to give a talk next week at KPMG, as a matter of fact. I'm on a panel. This is just a really, really difficult marketplace. So it's as I mentioned earlier, this nuclear winter thing is that, 2 years ago when you went in your bank, you see the teller says, you want to put in checking or savings? You go, you have to laugh. Are you kidding me? It's 0.0001 in savings. What do I give a darn? But you can walk in now, they're going to give you 5%. Oh God, we can't wait to give you 5%. So investors now have safer places to put money. And although 5% doesn't sound like a lot of money, it's a safe haven. When you were getting nothing, you would take a risk. I took some risk a couple of years ago that I would not normally take in this now. So there's a pullback just from that perspective. Another perspective is all the uncertainty with the political upheaval in this country where people can't even talk to each other. I mean, I'm old enough to remember when Republicans and Democrats were friends, they would just sit around and talk over a beer or whatever. God forbid you even tell anybody what you care about. So we have political unrest, which is a big question mark. And we have all this worldwide upheaval. My little brother wrote me a note this morning. He studies the world. He says, Bob, I'm telling you right now, someone's going to get to Putin, assassinate him. They all kinds of weakness there. The guy in North Korea is shipping mud and dirt and balloons into South Korea because the natives are sending horrible things about it. They want to let the South Koreans know how bad it is. China has all kinds of issues surrounding their economy, whatever. So I mean, and Iran is in fear that Israel's going to attack them. So there's and then the problems with Israel. So there's all kinds of world upheaval. We have all these things that cause upheaval. Investors get very quiet. It's like back to the Godfather. They hit the mattresses. So it's really a nuclear winter. So if you're a startup, or if you're an existing company that's sort of nice to have, but not the greatest company in the world, not the bright shiny object, these are very, very difficult times. Just some thoughts.
Back to David's comment or question for just a moment.
Yeah, go ahead.
David, last year, I don't even remember seeing a single tokenization come by us. And Web3 in general and crypto in general was pretty much dead for venture funding. This year we're seeing that change. So there's been a steady tick-tock of blockchain companies. And in the last 45 days, I think I've seen 2, maybe 3 ICOs and tokenization. So there is movement there, and a variety of reasons for it. But that shows maybe that we're going to continue opening up in crypto. Certainly blockchain continues, and in Web3 this year.
And Don, all the companies we're adding on daily in new fundings, we're seeing $5 to $10 million going to all these Web3 crypto companies, whatever.
Yeah, no, there is money going to crypto and Web3 companies this year that was not going last year, and there's a lot more of it.
It's going to hit the wall like everything else, though. The good ones are going to do well, and the 80-20 rule is going to prevail, and a bunch are going to drop out. And so, but probably something interesting is going to happen with all this stuff.
I want to take a little bit of a detour on the IPO side, because there's one other thing we saw happening in the last 60 days, and that is more SPACs dissolving. For anyone who doesn't remember, SPAC is basically a reverse merger that became a hot property in 2021. Does that sound right?
Yep.
Okay, so 2021. And basically what it did was allow a company that really wasn't ready to go public to make claims way beyond what forward-looking claims, way beyond what a traditional IPO would allow you to do. So everything was loosey-goosey. A lot of very close to the edge companies did SPACs. And since then, most of them have not done well. We've seen 3 SPACs in the last month choose to dissolve, 2 because they didn't have the money to continue, and the other because they had just run out of time. They couldn't find a company to merge with. So that continues to be out there in the IPO world, but 90 days ago, 120 days ago, the SEC passed rules that now do not allow SPACs that flexibility. So we still see them coming through, but not to the degree we did before. Okay, I want to switch now. Let me go over here to one more thing. I want to show you. Nope, wait a minute. I went the wrong way. There we go. So this was our breakdown last month. And this is obviously artificial intelligence between Scale AI and XAI took up a huge chunk of the money. But there is a lot going on in AI, and I know I don't have to tell you guys that. There are now Cerebras has come out with their chip, which is supposedly the largest chip ever produced. And depending on what you value in terms of training, is multiple times faster than the NVIDIA. And of course, NVIDIA has a new generation coming down the road. I think it's late this year. So that's just continuing. We're seeing machine learning in the models, particularly the models, becoming almost commodity. New ones coming out every single week, both open source as well as the closed group. Now, another interesting thread that has run for the last, well, quite some time. Of course, NVIDIA in the public market hit a new high. They passed the 3 trillion mark the other day. Now, there's no good news without a flip side to it. And the flip side to their 3 trillion is that the DOJ has launched an antitrust investigation against them. So I'm sure they're not looking forward to that. But they do control just a huge part of the market. And obviously the other players in AI are not happy with that. And to the extent that now you have Intel and Meta and OpenAI, more of the open source folks getting together and forming a consortium, put aside their differences, the focus of this is coming up with an architecture and a set of chip qualities that will allow interchangeability in a data center. So in other words, you're no longer locked into NVIDIA. Anyone in the group could, theoretically produce a chip that could be used by anyone else with other components. Sort of a AI open source, if you will. The only company that's not part of that group is NVIDIA, not surprisingly. So AI just continues to dominate of dollars. I'm sorry, was there a question? Okay. So let's see. Okay, NVIDIA here now. I tried an exercise. Bob and I have been working on funding and deriving who's doing the most funding in different areas. And I thought it would be a great exercise to take artificial intelligence and run that analysis so you can get a feel for, I was quite frankly surprised, the large VCs and then the angels that are playing in that area. So let's, I'm going to head over here and bring up. So this is just a report of everything that's been funded that we've recorded in the last year. I'm going to pull out the AI companies. Let's see, we're going to sort here. And we're going to do one more and reverse sort. Okay, so I'm going to select some, no, I need 200 or 1,000. Let me go back up here. Voila, 500, that'll do. Okay, so we're going to select some of these companies and get a feel for who's funding them. And we're doing this by sector. For AI, we're throwing a huge web because there's so much different hardware, software, models, chips, accelerators, you name it. Let's see. Just keep going here. I'm going to get about 20 of these and then we'll run this. And for right now, I'm not bothering whether it's hardware, whether it's software, whether it's developer tool, pure AI, because I want to see the crossovers. Let's do a few more here. 1, 2, back here. 3, 4. Okay, let's, so we're gonna take these and we are going to go ahead and do a special report, an investor analysis, and look at these 28 companies, what we have in terms of investors. So there we go. So for the 28 companies, there were 271 investors, 28 of them in multiple companies. Lots and lots of overlap in AI. And incidentally, another place that you see this kind of overlap, this is totally unrelated comment, but Web3. Web3 crypto, you will see the companies cross-investing, co-investing. It is very, very common. So what I find very interesting about this, here's your most common investor, NVIDIA. So don't think that NVIDIA is holding back on spending all that market cap. They're out there investing heavily. They've got their accelerator, in this case, just out of this list, which is not all of the AI from last year by a long shot. They invested in Imbue, Perplexity, Essential, and Fabrica together. Then we get down into SV Angel, which very, very common early stage investor in the Valley. And Alumni Ventures, I want to run up now and I want to flip this over because I want to show you what angels we have out of this. This is the VCs only. Let's see how many of those investors were VCs. So 208 of the investors were VCs. Now I'm going to get an error message on this. Just, I'm going to ignore it. Yes, I know. We're fixing that. So out of these 28 companies, we have 69 angels. And out of these angels, these are, in the Valley, these are very commonly heard names. Nat Friedman, Elad Gil. So Bob, what do you think about this number of angels in that few companies? Well, I'll take a hit at this. The angels.
Bob was muted.
Okay.
I was just starting to say that we're actively taking this format now, and because we're raising capital for emerging companies, we weren't using this before, but we developed this in the Q4 and we're going to start incorporating this more actively into our overall program that we're working with a firm called I2I, and so we have a whole program. But anyway, it's interesting because we can, with our data, we can reach down and find these people, and then I'm going to send a letter over my signature from LinkSV, and probably connect to them, to some of them on first degree and probably every one of them on second degree, and just try and start a conversation about a particular company that I think they might like to meet. So I've done this before, but I think we're going to do it more actively now because we have this resource right in front of us. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is an unusual number of angels for that many companies, and it demonstrates in the Valley the overlap on these. It's a let's see, incestuous group. I don't know if that's the right word. Anyways, they invest together. You will very frequently find 3 or 4.
Oh, there's a herding effect on. These guys, guys and gals all know each other. It's called the A list. They're all friends. They all interconnect. They have a lot of money. And what they do is they'll send a note out to about 50 of their friends. I'm going to go in this, and they'll get a check for $25,000 just without just automatically saying, count me in and circle back if it's really interesting or whatever. So they're all getting in. The question is to the degree that they invest.
Yeah, exactly. They have the in where anyone else outside that group is not going to get the opportunity to invest in these companies. Let's see, any questions? Okay. So David, one of these times, if we happen to have an entrepreneur in the group, we could do an interesting exercise and run this analysis for that person.
Or David, we could get a group of entrepreneurs together and show them this and talk about this fundraising platform we've got.
That'd be great.
So, let's see. For the rest of the month, I'll send out some more detailed notes, but the highlights are basically what we covered. More money, more later stage, more M&A. Public market keeps doing well. We hope to see more of this. And now June and July. Last year, June was busy. July was a vacation month. So we're waiting to see if this trend is going to continue into June, or if June is going to slow down and be more of a vacation month this year than it was last year. And on that, unless anyone has any questions or comments, David, I can turn it back over to you.
I have a few comments.
Okay.
So in the Web3 world, and I think this speaks to Bob, and I'm in Bob's camp in many ways. Like, I don't always quite get it, but having lived here in Puerto Rico, there's a lot of momentum behind what they'll call the believers. And there's a very bright young man here on the island. And I spent a lot of time with him a week ago. And I had someone else come in on a cruise ship, a business partner. He's like literally out of the blue. I'm in town. So I went down, picked him up in a car, had him hang out with this young guy because we thought we might want to do some sort of a little partnership. And it was only a 15-minute car ride. And the young guy, after this other guy got out and went back to his cruise ship, he said, yeah, that guy's not a believer. Now, that's one side of the equation. And the believing is about decentralization. It's about taking power away from the government, away from big tech. It's about being unstoppable. That's what it's about. And there's a new project called Morpheus. It's basically, I think it's an AI platform that's going to do a whole bunch of things. And through these alternate investment options that come with Web3, they have raised $300 million for their project, apparently. But then again, it's hard to say what's happening here. Are these people, are these $300 million coming from whales and big players who put dimes and dollars into crypto, into Bitcoin, and now they're sitting on, $70,000 a coin? So, one of the things to consider is, does your database track some of these alternate investment options? Because this may become more of the new generation's approach to how they fund.
What alternate investment?
Well, they don't do a safe note. They don't do a round of funding with evaluation. They just have these coins, and I'm not even sure. And it's a Cayman Islands entity. Oh, by the way, on top of all this, on top of all of it, here's what they all want: no leadership. No leadership, but I just like to have, basically, I'd like to have an annuity that comes off this thing I've created, and everyone else gets benefit from it too. And so it's really hard for me to predict what's going to happen, but I get the philosophy. The philosophy is we're tired of being controlled by big companies who can shut us down because we do something that they think is going to take some of their, a part of their pie. And that's every category you could imagine, right? All the big categories, whether it's media and entertainment or more traditional businesses. So, I can't say that I completely understand it, but these are some of the philosophies that the younger generation are fully embracing right now.
Yeah, we don't see a lot of ICOs or tokens. I read about a variety of them. Most of them, as you say, Cayman Islands. There's also a lot coming out of Singapore.
Correct.
Yeah.
The UAE.
Yep. And UAE, right.
Yeah, like I think it's UAE or one of the Middle Eastern countries, Singapore, and obviously Puerto Rico is a little more friendly, but there's a lot of reasons why these things don't work inside our current regulatory system, or people are concerned that they'll get shut down in some way, shape, or form. So all the businesses gone offshore. All this new Web3 stuff it's happening somewhere else.
Yeah.
A couple islands over from here or other parts of the world.
And you're talking about Morpheus Labs, right?
Let me look that up
I
real
think
quick.
like if I've heard the name, that's got to be it because I don't follow it.
Yeah.
Might
Well,
be, yeah. I think I've heard that.
Let's see here.
Because they're out of Singapore, it's not funding we would report on. Even if it were here with those options, we do keep those in our database. We will report on an ICO. We will report on a tokenization, and report it in our current currency values, if you will.
You know, Michael, I've been thinking while you're talking, just smoking to myself about this, that there are a small group of people that can have so much money, starting with Elon Musk and drilling down to Reid Hoffman and yada, 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 that they see deals and opportunities really early on, and they already know who the really smart young people are. Say smart people, not young. Smart people are. They track smart people. So when we talk about combustible, you talk what really smart people with technology, with people that just have so much money, doesn't matter. They can get into stuff and create stuff that as an average investor, we're never going to see until it creates something. So who knows what they're dreaming up? You know, so I'm not surprised when we see these incredibly big deals coming out of the gate we've never heard of before. Also, they're being backed because if they lose, they lose. They can take a loss and you know, there's so much risk going on out there for in the new horizons. So we're going to see a lot of new stuff. Go ahead, Don.
I have a question for Michael.
So by the way,
Michael,
I think it's Morpheus AI. I believe it's Morpheus AI.
Okay.
Yeah. It's an AI
There's
platform.
3 or 4 or 5 Morpheuses out there. So
Yeah, of course. This
Okay.
is the newer one. And one of the guys who used to live here, he moved back to Austin. He couldn't find the talent to execute this business. So he moved back to Austin.
that's interesting.
We're now seeing the word AI show up in titles too, Don. All of a sudden, the word AI as a chief AI. You know,
Yeah, I passed you a couple of AI titles the other day. I know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Michael, a quick question for you. In
Sure.
chat, you had a comment on DOS versus Mac OS.
Yeah, that was saying that Apple was like NVIDIA. They're like,
okay.
we have our walled garden, and everyone's like, and everyone else was on the PC platform of effectively DOS underneath Windows.
Right.
So that was the commentary there, and so
Gotcha.
it's everybody and the darling leader. But what I think's a little different here is NVIDIA owns the market. Like they're just selling out, right? And Apple did well, but really the PC owned the market.
Yeah, a little bit different
Different
positioning
dynamic.
on each of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, NVIDIA is obviously just closed the market for them. They've got everything. That's where it comes down to. You have AMD coming out with something, Intel comes out with something, but they have such a tiny fraction. And anyone doing serious machine learning, serious model, foundation model, they're going for NVIDIA.
Yeah, there's no field programmable gate array to make AI chips, right? So you got to have a fab. It takes big money. The biggest companies that have been at it. It's not like Microsoft didn't anticipate this. There are people who have been working on those chips for years, and it takes deep pockets. So catching up is really it's hard. And if NVIDIA is ahead of the race and can stay ahead of the race, then
well, on top of that, they've got the software ecosystem around them. If you're working on NVIDIA chips, you're also working on NVIDIA software. And you may be even using NVIDIA application, for robotics. So they've got it many, many places all integrated. So it's
well,
Pretty
Well,
robust ecosystem.
here's the biggest leading indicator. They don't have the sales team does not have a number at NVIDIA. They don't have a upside commission structure because they're sold out.
Yeah.
They're
And
so sold out that they have a non-traditional sales force where it's just execute the business kind of a situation, or fill the pipeline some more. But they're not, they're not out chasing or competing for business. They're just sold out.
yeah.
I think that's why all these
So-
young people in Silicon Valley, I think, work 27 hours a day, think they can build the next great thing. You wonder what happened after Apple? What's the next big, what happens after Google? Well, here's NVIDIA. I mean, come on.
Yeah, and you have only to look at the number of companies that are building their own chips to understand how important they think this is. Every one of the big three. You get Microsoft, you get Facebook, you get Google. They're all doing their own chips and have been and are continuing to pour billions into that development. So
The next big thing will be infrastructure. It'll be energy access, and it'll be the actual data centers to run all
Yeah.
this equipment. That's
yep,
going to be
agreed.
that's going to be the bottleneck that could show up, or where some people may have more advantage than others. And what's interesting is, I think it was at BlackRock, one of these big investment players, 40% of their portfolio is in warehouses.
Really?
Yeah.
Because of e-commerce. They figured out 10 years ago that this would be the trend and that warehouses were going to be valuable. And that's true. There's a shortage of warehouses around the country. And so when you're trying to start a business that requires like large manufacturing space, you're competing with Amazon or other equivalent type companies.
Right.
And if you think about it, what is a data center? It's a warehouse. So imagine if you had a warehouse in the right neighborhood where there was energy and there was connectivity, and the lease is about to be up. Well, are you going to rent it back to Amazon or DHL or whoever that is at, I'm just going to make them a number, $100,000 a month? Or is a big player going to come in and say, I'll give you $1 million a month for that building?
Yeah.
And they're going to go build it out.
I think this is a great topic for the breakout rooms. So why don't we just do this before we go and discuss
for
the
it.
topic?